Well, after all, it is my first trip to Japan, and it has been a wonderful time so far. I have enjoyed playing in Nagoya in a wonderful concert hall with a wonderful orchestra, conductor, composer. I came to Japan with extremely high expectations. I have always wanted to play in Japan, and so far everything has been an absolute delight. I am 27-year-old. I come from Italy, from Milan, the city of La Scala, the city of Pollini, the city that probably represents musical culture in Italy the most. I grew up in a family of scientists. My parents are physicists. My brother is a mathematician. And I always loved both artistic disciplines, especially, of course, music, as well as scientific ones like mathematics. After studying in conservatory, like many young pianists, I tried participating in a couple of competitions, and when I was 20, I received the first prize in the Beethoven competition in Bonn, Germany. And after that, I started receiving concert invitations, management, and I had the opportunity to record 3 different CDs so far with Beethoven and Bach works. Which takes us to now, where I am a pianist performing in Japan. I encountered this piece by Bach, the Art of Fugue, which is his last masterpiece that he left unfinished at his death after working on these fugues for over 10 years, when I was still a student. In Italy, we are meant to study 2 years of harpsichord as well in conservatory if we want to become pianists. And my teacher of harpsichord was a scholar who knew this work very well and suggested I should try playing 1 or 2 of the fugues. I knew the work by its fame. I knew that it was an incredibly high level of intellect and craftsmanship to be able to write fugues that are so complex on one single theme. But I never properly listened to it, and I never had a chance to listen to it live in a concert. When I started learning it, I noticed that yes, there is, of course, intellect in the piece. There is a high degree of compositional technique, but that is not the point of the piece. There is also an incredibly compelling and powerful emotional content, as well as a almost spiritual one. And it's also a piece that is extremely satisfying physically to play on a keyboard, trying to listen and care for all of the 4 voices that make up fugues. So I knew at that point that sometime in my life I would want to learn the whole cycle and present it to an audience. The more I studied this work, the more I had questions about it and wished to go further and deeper into the music. When the COVID pandemic hit, suddenly I had months and months of free time without concerts, without engagements, and this felt like the perfect time to concentrate only on the piece by Bach and take long months of devotion to this music to be able to perform it. At the same time, I decided to create a series of interviews, of conversations with personalities from all different sorts of cultural fields. So for each of the 14 fugues that are in this work, I decided to have a conversation with a different person on how Bach's music impacted their life, their work, and what meaning it had for them. Among the people that I was lucky enough to involve in this project, there is, of course, Mitsuko Uchida, that opens the series of conversations, Alexander Polzin, a sculptor, Alfred Brendel, who's also been my mentor for many years, but also Peter Sellers, opera director, Frank Gehry, Stephen Isserlis, as well as a dancer like Sasha Waltz, a film director like Alexander Sokurov, a pupil of Tarkovsky, a writer, Dominique Edé, a composer, George Benjamin, and so on. People representing all sorts of different cultural fields, mathematicians. This series of conversations will be released starting in September. So far, meanwhile, I have recorded the Art of Fugue and written a booklet for it, and I've performed it over, I think, 30 times internationally at this point, including in the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, in Montreal at the Bach Festival, and many other beautiful concert halls. I'm going to perform it again in Wigmore Hall in July, and hopefully many more times in the future, and who knows, even in Japan. And that is pretty much the description of the project that I am.
Booklet?
The booklet of the CD I wrote myself, and I decided, since this is a work that has been probably overstudied from a musicological point of view, so many musicologists have written a lot about it, I wanted to write poetry about the piece instead of an analysis or a technical presentation. Because what's harder sometimes to grasp in these complex pieces is how poetic, how beautiful, how moving they are, while the complexity is very evident. I decided for each of the fugues and canons in the Art of Fugue to write a different poem as a sort of prelude to the fugue, since these fugues have no prelude, unlike it is with the well-tempered clavier. And I decided to write sonnets for the counterpoints, for the fugues, and haikus for the canons, because the geometrical, synthetical, but extremely poignant and expressive nature of the haikus seemed to me like the most respectful of Bach's geometry and poet. I have thought for a very long time that coming to a foreign country sometimes, or a city that is not my own, staying there for 1 or 2 days, playing on stage, and then leaving immediately, is not the best way to bring music to that city or to establish a relationship with the people, the community, with the culture of the city that I'm visiting. And sometimes it feels like this rushed rhythm is not good for anything, for my health, for music, for people. So I decided to plan a completely different project from the Art of Fugue one, which is called Sonata for 7 Cities. And the idea is in 2025 and 2026 to choose 7 cities all around the world and stay there for a month instead of just a couple days. And what will happen is, by staying for a month, I can play a recital and a concerto with the symphony orchestra, but also have time to teach local young musicians, to play concerts for schools, for universities, to play for people who need music the most but cannot go to concert halls. So for example, in hospitals, in jails, in disadvantaged neighborhoods, as well as little cities around the larger ones where usually music just does not arrive. Yes. The idea to call it sonata comes from the fact that sonatas vary very differently in the history of music, but they're always the biggest, most profound statement that a composer can make about what is the nature of this instrument, the piano, what its function, how can we make it sound, what kind of music can we make with it. And since this project for me is exactly the same question, what can I do with a piano for the world, for the good of the world, in bringing music to different cities, it seemed to me that it was perfect to choose the programs in each city to revolve around sonata form, sonata pieces by Schubert, by Beethoven, by Schumann, Brahms, and so on, but also to ask the same question of contemporary composers. So to commission a new piano sonata from 7 living composers, 1 for each of the cities, and ask them the same questions. What do you think the nature of this instrument allows for in today's age and time? So the project is not public yet, but it will be announced in just 5 days. So you can find the website for it in a couple of days. It's sonatafor7cities.com. So far, I know that 5 cities wherein I've already decided to perform this will be Vienna, Istanbul, Cape Town, Vancouver, and my hometown, Milan, at the very end of the project.
Yes.
I think everywhere in the world today, it's very common to just specialize in one thing. And of course, at the level of specialization that is required to be a professional in any field today, it is impossible to reach the same level in many disciplines. So at some point, I made a choice that I didn't want to be a mathematician and focused only on my musical studies. My father, a long time ago, made the reverse choice. He studied piano until he was 18. He got admitted in the most prestigious university in Italy for physics and had to stop playing the instrument because it was too much work. But I think it's very important to keep the interest, the curiosity alive for many disciplines. To try and connect how an idea in mathematics connects to one in music or in art or in dance or in architecture or cuisine, because connections between things are what give meaning to the things themselves and to life. And ultimately, I think in these connections lies the most beauty. That was the basis of my Bach project, connecting Bach's music to dance, to architecture, to mathematics, to art. And it is something that is definitely a part of my personality. I hope you enjoy this program. I chose one of my favorite Beethoven and Schubert sonatas for this concert. I've been working on this music for many years. I think what is most appealing to me about this kind of piece of music is the ability to stay with it for a long time and keep finding new and new details and layers and layers. Composers, towards the end of their lives, something magical happens where all their experiences, all their abilities, all their wishes find a new language that is extremely condensed, and they manage in one musical idea, in one musical detail, to convey such profound emotion as is not seen usually in their earlier works. And to be able to look for precisely that emotion for months and months of study is something that gives me great joy. And this is why I like to perform this music, to spend a lot of time studying it, and why I hope you can be moved by it tonight.